to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening and welcome to the February 26, 2015 Environmental Advisory Council meeting in Radnor. I'd like to preface my meeting by saying I just had a cavity filled, and if I drool or slur my words, please just raise your hand and I'll repeat. One item of business that we failed to complete at the last meeting was the annual election of officers. Sloan is the acting vice chair. I'm the acting chair, and we both indicated to the membership that we would like to continue on for the next year if we had the support of the group, and we received a positive response to that. And I don't believe there's anybody else running for the posts at this time. So help me out with the protocol here. We just do a.
Should we ask for?
Could do it all. I just did this yesterday.
Yeah.
Planning. You would say the nominating, did you have a nominating committee?
We did not have a nominating committee.
Okay, then I don't know if a liaison could make a motion, but why don't you make a motion that the EAC endorse or vote to ratify the appointment or the reappointment?
At the same time, we could do this both at the same time.
We did it separately.
Okay, let's do it separately then. Do I have any motions for the vice chair, position of vice chair for 2015?
Yes, I so moved.
You move that Sloan retain his position for the 2015?
Yes, indeed.
Okay. Do I have a second for that?
I second it.
All in favor? Aye. Congratulations.
Thank you.
You may vote if you'd like, but just keep your microphones off. Do I have any motion for the chair, position of chair?
I so moved.
You move that I keep my position for another year?
Yes.
A second?
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Congratulations to me.
You had to vote because otherwise
Yeah, if I didn't vote, we don't have a quorum. Okay, we do have a quorum, though. Okay, thank you. Moving on, we're going to review the minutes to last month's meeting. At the last minute, Sloan did send around a correction to the minutes. He said that in the minutes there is a note that the township owns 3 hybrid vehicles.
Right.
I did a quick glance, I didn't see that, but of course that is not true. We are trying to get the township to acquire hybrid vehicles, but they don't own any. So we're going to get that corrected wherever it is on here.
It's on page 3 at the end of the green team comments.
Oh, okay.
Dan, did you do the last version of these? I don't have the Word document.
Yeah, I did. And there's a couple corrections to be made in the attendance, I think. Sally, I think, showed was there, and she was not. And I think I had you not even on the list, so.
Okay.
All right, we'll get that cleaned up and circulated to Melissa, and then she can post them online. No wonder I didn't see these, because my printer only prints every 3rd line, and those lines were smudged out. Okay. Announcements. I have a few announcements I'd like to make. While I find them, does anybody else have any other announcements of their own? I've just found mine. The Skunk Hollow Community Garden is presenting a workshop called Understanding Your Soil. This is on March 8th at the Radnor United Methodist Church. More information is on the radnor.com website, but they suggest that it's a free event where you can learn how to assess, analyze, and balance your garden soils. I wanted to note that the Pennsylvania Environmental Council website is dramatically improved over the past month, I think. I think they must have a new webmaster or something, because all the articles are timely and they're all within the past month. There's got to be at least 9 articles there. Very interesting stuff. There was too much for me to summarize, so I suggest people go to the PEC website, check it out. The Delaware County Household Hazardous Waste event that's coming up is on Saturday, April 25th. It's at the Emergency Services Training Center, and that's in Darby, PA. The address is online. I can't remember the website. I didn't write it down, but if you did a search for Delaware County household hazardous waste, that would pop right up. There's a list on that website that tells you all the scheduled events where you can bring your hazardous wastes, and April 25th is the nearest one. The Lower Merion Conservancy and St. Joseph's University is presenting their 5th annual Stormwater Workshop on March 12th. It's at St. Joe's in Philly. There's free lunch. And this year's theme is Stewarding the Future of Clean Water. It addresses ways to implement stormwater management projects successfully while creating community and municipal engagement. Right up our alley here in Radnor. I'm not sure if anybody is going to go to that, but we have a couple contacts that have a lot of interest in stormwater in this township, so I'll make sure I provide this to them. Sally gave us an announcement from her group, the Chester County Citizens for Climate Protection. It's a nuclear power update, and it's on March 11th at Westchester's Borough Hall. They say that currently nuclear plants are the largest source of emissions-free electricity that we have in Pennsylvania, providing nearly 20%, in our country, providing nearly 20% of our nation's electrical power. They're offering to teach more about this controversial source of electricity. There's a gentleman named Mr. John Nagel discussing the technology of nuclear power generation, the state of the industry, and future possibilities. I don't believe it's our John Nagel, but could be if he's a nuclear power expert. Is he?
I think John's background's in nuclear energy.
Oh, excellent. Well, then
Yeah.
it is our John Nagel. Okay, excellent.
How would you distinguish, or why is nuclear less emissions than, let's say, hydroelectric?
Well, I think by saying emissions-free, of course they mean air emissions is what they were referring to. Of course, they just said that it was the largest source.
In Pennsylvania.
In the nation.
Oh,
So by that I assume that hydropower is less than 20%. State Representative Greg Vitale has an announcement. He said, "I wanted you all to be aware that I will be hosting a hearing of the House Democratic Policy Committee on Monday, March 2nd at 10 a.m. to discuss what Pennsylvania should be doing to address global warming. It will take place at the Minority Caucus Room of the State Capitol Building. This hearing is open to the public, and you are most welcome to attend, but questions are limited to members of the Policy Committee." And he suggests to contact his district office with any questions. That's the end of my announcements. At this time, we'll move on to our next order of business, which is a discussion on artificial turf. And this subject was brought up to us by Leo Burnaby, who's here from the school district. He's the director of operations there. And step up, Leo. And I think what we were asked to do was take a look at the environmental issues related to artificial turf fields as they might have changed since the last time our commission or our council reviewed the environmental state of things back in, I think it was 2008, right? So before we get into what we found, why don't you just give us an overview of why this has come back up and
Sure.
what we can do to help.
Well, first of all, I appreciate your time. I took the opportunity to put some notes together to organize my thoughts, but to explain to you where we are in the process and why I've come to you this evening. It's been about 2 years in the planning. The turf field that we call Enke Field was installed in 2003. It's on its 12th year of use, and the surface needs to be replaced. Our desire this evening was for me to come and see if there are any, if you're aware of any significant new findings or concerns that might preclude expansion of the field. We're not only talking about resurfacing the existing field, but a slight expansion towards the the light uprights on the south side of the field. We want to do that in conjunction with the sports community user groups. And I just wanted you to be aware that we are absolutely aware of the importance of due diligence in this kind of planning, particularly where we have kids, athletes playing, learning, competing. I wanted to tell you briefly about some of that due diligence. I took the opportunity to evaluate the current fields, their use, their benefits to the school community and the community at large, so we measured their use against natural turf fields and other play spaces that we have. I reviewed the existing site, the water recharge system that is under the field, the effluent control devices, migration of rubber infill, which is a concern for many, including myself, inspection of the local tributaries, that the storm water that goes through this Enke field, where that water enters, and then an intensive review, as you folks had done in 2008, of the studies concerning environmental and health impacts. And I know that health impacts isn't the topic of the meeting tonight, but they're going to be kind of interspersed together because the studies are. So our diligence included the review of studies, in particular the use of crumb rubber. We have been cautious and deliberate in terms of considering the safety of the use of that product on student athletes and on children. And our determination was that while there is no perfect product, including natural turf, for many reasons, maintenance over use of herbicides, pesticides, et cetera, but while crumb rubber also is not perfect in its makeup, it continues to be the current best solution for these needs, for ongoing and consistent athletic play. The positive environmental impact of using a product like that is, of course, its recyclability, and the fact that we're taking those tires out of the waste stream, and we're able to use them in groundwater recharge systems rather efficiently. Now we have rain gardens at the middle school and vegetated roofs on top, and those are all ideal for those applications. But for a wear surface, the rubber aggregate appears to be the best and most consistent material to use. I did evaluate cork and other natural substitutes. None seem to have the impact resistance, the cushion, and the playability that this crumb rubber does. There are a lot of studies regarding heat stress, and we have received a lot of information over the concern of heat stress because the temperature of a turf field, just very similarly to asphalt or any dark surface, will rise as opposed to natural turf. And the way that we manage that is we utilize the National Athletic Trainers Association guidelines on heat and illness. We have professional trainers who go out and use a sling psychrometer to measure temperature and humidity on any of the days during the spring, summer, and early fall. They get a wet bulb temperature. They measure that temperature against the chart. They establish from that wet bulb temperature practice intensity, practice timing, equipment use. So kids will be told to take their pads or helmets off, as an example, and then mandated player assessment for water and rest periods. So as an example of that, what they may do is during a game period, and it's not common, but it's smart and it's becoming more prevalent, particularly in school-aged play, is the kids may, while it wouldn't be a timeout during a game, they get an 8-minute to a 20-minute rest break. It's off the clock. It's not part of the game, but they get a break and they get water and they cool down. So then there's the discussion about the impact quality of rubber or artificial turf versus natural grasses. And I used to say all my life, but up until about 20 years ago, I played soccer. The last 20 have gone in a blink, but I would still prefer to play, as many athletes would, on natural grass. The problem with natural grass is you can get 20 to 30 really good plays a year out of it, but then it rains, you practice, you destroy the natural turf. Very few facilities have the opportunity, and I'm blessed to be working in a place with a great deal of resources, but we don't even have the opportunity to keep natural grass the way that we would like to keep it for an athletic play surface. That's why we need to utilize these alternative surfaces. So we study, regardless of natural grass or artificial, we study the impact qualities of the surface by measuring players for concussion and impact injuries. All players in the district must, who participate in that level of sports, must participate in what's called a impact concussion management program. They must understand it, and that program is managed by our professional trainers. The community sports groups have also engaged in that discussion by doing baseline testing for concussions, AED training. Those are the defibrillators. They even contributed those to the fields. Player assessment and reaction procedures as part of their local program. So even when school hours are done and school play is done, the outside sports user groups are trained in those management techniques. The fields that we use in Radnor, particularly the artificial fields at Radnor High School, are a place where all levels of athletes get play time. I'm not saying that there aren't some level of sports where there aren't cuts made, but it's very limited in Radnor. In many places, teams are cut to a good degree because they can only have so many kids on so many practices on so many fields. When you have the facilities that we do as a community, you have a greater opportunity to have a greater number of kids impacted positively. Just one or two more things. Our extension of this field and the resurfacing, we will be required, as with any project, to comply with the NPDES permitting, the Clean Water Act permitting, and then, of course, any township code requirements that we might have. And we will also be obtaining, as I had on the past two fields, lead-free certification on the artificial turf. And that was one of the major concerns in one of the studies from New Jersey about the lead constituent in some of the plastic fibers. But we do have that on the existing fields as well. So we would like to capture this current opportunity with the sports community to engage them and to get more athletes on the field by slight expansion. And the reason I'm here tonight is to see if we're expanding our knowledge base by coming to you to see if you have any concerns that you think might preclude this use.
Thanks, Leo.
Yeah, thank you very much, Leo.
Thank you.
Very interesting, important issue. I think it's important to review it not just once, but really to sort of stay current on the issue. So appreciate your coming here. Had a couple of just specific follow-up questions from what you said. I thought it was interesting that you had looked at other types of artificial turf surfaces as alternatives to rubber. I think you mentioned cork.
Yes.
And I would love to hear what you looked at, what the pros and cons were, because obviously there may be some options there that would eliminate some of the risks that we've seen, at least discussed. So, was cork the only one, or
no? There are a few natural elements that are used, and I want to say cork and bamboo are the two that come to the top of my mind. Shaved or crumbled bamboo shavings and cork, but there is another. And of course sand, which brings with it a concern over the silica in the use. But one of the concerns I had over using the rubber was the migration of the rubber into the waste stream. And we found that, I have read that and I have personally found that it doesn't migrate because we have effluent devices, water boxes, effluent boxes that we can go out and inspect. And I went out and took samples, and it doesn't, as a matter of fact, float off the top of the surface as many may think. It gets down into the fibers of the grass, it allows the water to filter through, And some of those naturals, some of the concern was that they mold or grow other particulates on them, and some of them also float much more readily than the heavier rubber. The other things that are available out there, one is a product called Nike Grind, and I'm certainly not going to bash a product with a Nike name on it, but the findings with that were that it wasn't as wholesome as it was originally cut out to be, and some of these products are a bit cost prohibitive. Absolutely inert polymer, scientifically made inert products are very prohibitively expensive. There are plastics that are used, small tubular-like structures that are cut the same size as the rubber granules that are claimed to be 100% inert, but they can add another $100,000 or a few $100,000 to a field. So, you know, somewhere you have to measure the cost of the effectiveness too. And while you may get an inert product, if it's not affordable, you know, it's impossible to use.
But you do save on maintenance. So is it still prohibitive even when you factor in?
There's no difference in maintenance in these plastic nodules that they make that have no, tire rubber has constituents in it that nobody likes to spell or talk about. Carbon black and I know Maya could come in here and just name them off the top of her head. The challenge is what are the tests of the effluent of that, and what's the potential for that to be either inhaled, ingested, or otherwise adversely consumed. According to everything that I've read, and I've read all the stacks that at least as many as I could that she and others have studied as well, there is really no possibility for, at this time that I'm aware of, that people can get sick by that, as compared to what we're doing every day, driving on the roads and dispelling that in tires, or the other things that we're using around and in our environment. But there's no maintenance difference between using that and one of these other products, one of these inert products. Rubber's in there, it's in and it stays. Excuse me.
Okay. I would just comment on your last comment about there being no possibility of any kind of problem. I guess my read so far of the literature is that there's no definitive finding.
You're correct.
So even
Yes.
though, it's a little bit of a nitpick, but, you know.
Not at all,
you know,
you're absolutely correct.
Okay.
Yep.
And then I did, I guess that's that was my main question as to whether there were other alternative artificial turf. I'm sorry, I had one other question, which was with respect to the heat. And I appreciate that you have, experts who go out and would measure the heat.
Mm-hmm.
And do you consider not allowing a sporting event if the heat gets above a certain temperature and maybe moving it to a night game?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, the AD showed me a schedule of practices based around the hottest time of day, and they take that time of day out of the schedule during the front end of their season.
Okay.
During the hottest portion of the day. Yes.
So they actually are rescheduling and being able to
Yes.
avoid being out there when it apparently can get extremely hot and dangerous. So
Yes.
it sounds like they are taking that into consideration. Okay.
And they'll do that on a natural surface as well.
Okay.
But in particular, they're very mindful of the artificial surface.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
I have a question. The surface that we're talking about is going to be replaced?
Yes.
The surface itself, what about the infill?
Infill is recaptured and reused.
The same infill?
Yes.
So you don't bring new infill in or something, except to supplement what's maybe has been lost or picked up with the turf?
Precisely.
Does it seem odd to you that the field only lasted 13 years?
No, actually, our capital plan calls for replacement every 10, the surface, and the manufacturer's expectation and warranty is for 8. So we're very happy with the amount of play and the longevity that we've gotten out of it.
Is there any difference in terms of the infill and extending the lifespan of a field? Like if you use the plastic tubes, would it potentially last longer? Does the manufacturer?
No, we chose to use 100% rubber infill because we believed, and we still believe, that it doesn't compact as much as a silica rubber mix. So we think that that may have contributed to the field lasting longer than some people who had originally installed sand-filled, infilled fields.
And when you say you're slightly increasing the size, can you give us a percent?
I would say less than a third larger. 95 feet by the length of the field would be the outer extent of the possibility of any increase in size. We still have to do the drawing, the engineering, the township approval, but 95 feet takes us from roughly the curb line of the existing field out to the light standards. Now, there's going to be some desire to probably keep the new curb line in 10 to 20 feet from those standards so that the play surface isn't right up against an obstacle. But that would be the outside allowable distance.
And the studies you did regarding natural turf versus artificial turf in terms of, you said herbicides and the fact that the surface deteriorates and can't be used as much as one of the factors, or?
Well,
I'm looking for a little clarification.
you know, it's an interesting, although we did meet with Andy McNitt, the gentleman from Penn State who's sort of the guru on natural turf, and he certainly taught us a lot. We have an interesting laboratory right there on campus with the other fields, with Loop and Roland, and Varsity's a baseball field, but we still have, still a natural grass field that we can compare natural grass fields and their longevity and their use and their ability to maintain play to the artificial turf field. And there is no comparison in terms of time. It's 20 times the use because there's no potential for damage. The fields that'll open next week, hopefully if we don't get a lot more white stuff and a little bit of sunshine, will be Enki and Prevost for the opening of spring sports. The other fields are going to have to wait quite a long time. Yep. Thank you.
Okay, I'd like to ask you a couple things. Can you tell me, explain in a little bit more detail what, I understand that the water recharge system is basically is underneath the field, and it collects the rainwater that trickles down through the tire crumb, right, and enters a system below. What then happens with that water?
Well, it's very similar but smaller in terms of depth to the underground recharge systems that the township probably has installed and that we have installed, although a little more complicated. Most of the underground stormwater recharge systems we install are just large aggregate with relatively large voids to hold a relatively large amount of water, and then some geotextile fabric, and it's allowed to go into the soil. Because of the fact that this particular surface needs to maintain really a table flat playing surface and allow a large volume of water to go down in a very short matter of time, what we use is a stone bed, and I can't give you the exact depth, but I'm going to say it's probably 30 inches or so of clean aggregate sandwiched by geotextile fabric. And then on top of that, when that surcharges, when those voids between that stone fills, there's perforated herringbone pipe. Someday when you're driving by the field just on the right day, when there's either a mist or a light snow, but the sun comes out, you can actually see the outline of this herringbone pipe on the field. That takes any surcharge that is not allowed to percolate into the local aquifer. That takes it into an effluent pipe, a storm box, connects with the storm box that comes down from the school and then effluents into the small tributary to the south side of the site.
You described the storm box as being something that captures and prevents tire crumb from migrating further down. Is that right?
Well, it's very similar to probably many deep storm boxes that are throughout the community. The pipe comes in high. The water goes down to the bottom of the box, and then it rises to an effluent pipe. So anything that gets into the box theoretically has an opportunity to sink to the bottom. Anything that floats, of course, will go out, which is why we checked and I inspected not only at the bottom of the two boxes that this piping networks goes to, but at the effluent in the stream also.
And what did you see?
Silt.
Yeah?
Yeah.
A lot of silty material. How much, what percentage of that silt would you say was tire crumb?
None. I was in awe. I expected, even at the creek side, because I thought a lot of it would, on heavy effluent days, super heavy rain, I expected to at least get a cup full, but none.
Mm-hmm. Is it possible that it's floating at the higher level?
Absolutely, yeah.
Would there be a possibility for some sort of filter or something like that would?
Well, the geotextile filters the entire field. So the design itself is inherent in not allowing any crumb rubber out. But, I don't care how it's made and how it's designed and how it's engineered, and you're still likely to get some off the surface. Just by athletes and spectators walking on and off the field, some crumb rubber gets off into the adjacent natural grass area. But it is filtered because the geotextile fabric is smaller than, the orifice in the fabric is smaller than the pieces of crumb rubber.
So that traps the crumb rubber on the surface of the playing field, but in a big downpour, presumably some of that's being swept off the field.
But not the way one would anticipate, yes.
Right.
Not the way one would think.
Right. But a filter on that pipe out into the stream, that would certainly trap anything that's coming in, through a big downpour, not having time to settle in the box. And, maybe if we did a, one-time trial to see if that would
Certainly
capture
could.
some,
Yep.
just to see.
Yeah, we do use, in some storm inlets around the community, we use sediment filters.
Right.
Yep.
I'd just make a comment. I've done a couple, I'm an engineer, I've done a couple projects with these on them. As I understand, what I'm understanding, this storm box you're talking about, that's really just accepting water that's coming from the under drain of the field, right?
That's
There's
correct.
it's not capturing anything that's running off of the surface.
That's correct.
Yeah, so I think the reason there's no rubber, like you say, that the pores in the geotextile that are separating the stone bed and the pipe from the infill can't, the crumb rubber can't get through the geotextile and show up in that box. So, but silt might, wind-blown silt that sort of blows onto that field and gets washed down there will get through that geotextile, and that's what you're finding in that box.
So what
Yes.
would is there any kind of way of capturing the rubber that would come off the surface? Would you have to have a berm or something?
Yeah,
or
I would
something?
think so.
So other than that,
Well, it is curbed partly for that reason.
Interesting.
There's an entire perimeter curb. And the rubber is, and I forget the very unscientific term that the turf industry uses, but it is mechanically agitated into the fibers of the turf. You really don't want the rubber, and you'll see it on a lot of new fields. You'll see it here, any of the new fields that have been installed. But once it's played on for a very short period of time, and once it's out in the atmosphere and rained on a few times, that rubber is initially it's, you can see it wafting when a player's playing on it. That settles down into the fibers of the turf. So it goes from this level of the turf down in between the fibers in very short order.
okay.
Yep.
But it sounds like that curb would trap the rubber in a big downpour, at least some of it, from going into the streams and things like that. So-
The curb is meant to be a perimeter on the entire system. Yes,
Will a curb be on the new part too?
yes.
Okay. That's,
I just wanted to give you a quick overview of what we looked at, Leo. And I would say we put quite a bit of time into this. Of course, we're not experts, but we know how to use the Google. I want to reiterate that while we saw quite a few studies that mentioned potential for adverse health effects, we did not focus on those studies. And I encouraged our group actually not to try to understand them or communicate them to the rest of the EAC, just because that's not our purview. But having said that, we saw them. They're out there, and we would, I think, as a group, feel pretty comfortable suggesting that once you feel comfortable with the environmental side of things, we really think that a human health related update be done similar to what we're doing, maybe by the Board of Health or some other organization that's qualified, because
but
we're
our
not.
focus was only on the environmental.
Only on the environmental, yeah.
Which, as you say, does overlap in some ways, but there's a whole set of issues that would be beyond our
Right.
focus.
So we kind of focused our studies, or we focused on those studies that, A, were forwarded to us. You mentioned Maya Van Rossum of the Delaware Riverkeeper. We did receive some information from Maya. She had several studies linked on a document. We attempted to look at all the studies that were environmentally related, and specifically those studies that came after 2008, when the Environmental Council had a chance to review the ones before them. We also rely heavily on the big environmental government agencies, such as the EPA and the Pennsylvania DEP. That we rely on studies that are peer-reviewed and that are published in respected journals. As you start to broaden the scope of the studies that you accept to review, you can really start to get I want to say, lower quality studies, frankly. Not that they don't have something to add, but we can only do so much. So that's why we focused on what we did. So far, am I right, guys? Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
I want to, I'd like to do my best at saying some legalese. I'm not a lawyer, but if I were, I'd probably say that the EAC did not find any findings in our research or in these studies that we reviewed that would prevent us from recommending artificial turf or tire crumb in particular, artificial turf. That's basically saying we didn't see any smoking guns, is what we're trying to say. We acknowledge that there are recent studies that suggest that it's possible that there's leachate issues, but those studies we felt didn't take it all the way far enough to say that there really is a reason to slow down and hold off on your plans. I just briefly, I'll mention zinc as one thing that we've seen. We acknowledge that we did read those studies, and they do suggest that it's possible that the zinc from the tire crumb, I think they're talking about the tire crumb, can get into that leachate you speak of and then get into these tributaries, these small streams, in some quantities that may or may not be higher than standards set by the DEP. But like I said, we don't think those studies necessarily took it far enough. Okay. Anybody else want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I would just emphasize that we did do a lot of research, reviewed the Delaware Riverkeepers articles as well as others. We appreciate the effort that folks on both sides bring to this issue. It is an important issue. It's not a resolved issue, and I think it's important that we continue to be vigilant on this. I am encouraged that, as Josh was saying, there is no recent definitive study that comes to a conclusion that these surfaces present an environmental danger. And I was able to reach out and speak with the EPA's expert on the topic, Dr. Michael Firestone in Washington. And yes, that's his name. And Dr. Firestone is the head of the EPA's Office of Children's Health, and he actually was instrumental in getting the EPA to fund the limited study from 2009, which is on the EPA website, which the headline was "Limited EPA Study Finds Low Level of Concern in Samples of Recycled Tires from Ball Field and Playground Surfaces." That study, he informed me, there has been no change in the EPA's view. He did repeat that it was a limited study. It looked at only a limited number of fields, but that there, to his knowledge, there has been no study since then that has caused the EPA to reconsider its statement that they do not see a cause for concern. He did mention that the state of Connecticut has recently undertaken its own updated study of the same issue and came to the same conclusion, that there is no evidence that would support finding that the artificial turf fields are not safe. Now, this is not the end of the discussion. I think we should stay in touch and would like to continue to have dialogue on this. I will mention that even though this is more of a health issue than an environmental issue, the state of Connecticut's letter from January 20th of this year did address a recent number of articles about the possibility of soccer players contracting or developing cancer, and found that there was they did not, documentation of an increased rate of cancer in soccer players would require an epidemiological study in which the total number who play on turf fields in a given region was also known. Basically, they're saying there is no peer-reviewed science that would support a concern around that cancer report. So,
Again, we're going to let our friends at the Board of Health take
Right.
care of that, right?
That's right. But it is mentioned in the state of Connecticut's release, but the overall headline is they continue to feel that there is no scientific grounds for concern about the artificial turf field. So that's where we are.
I forgot to mention one thing. You did mention the lead-free label.
Certification, yes.
I'm sorry?
Certification.
Certification.
Yep.
Yeah, and that's a great idea. And
Yep.
I would just recommend that you do your due diligence when deciding which grass material. What was the material that it's made out of? Is that polyethylene, or you said it was
Nylon?
You're going to make me misquote.
polyester, nylon?
I'm guessing.
Whatever that material is,
Polyproduct,
that
right.
supplier, and then,
Yes.
of course, your tire crumb supplier. I would just recommend doing your due diligence in terms of looking which certifications they offer.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe one offers a, low heavy metal certificate, or, something like that. I would just, see what's out there.
Yes.
Could you briefly revisit the infill option thing that you said that you ruled cork out? And cork, it strikes me as the most natural of all the possible substances. What was the problem with cork?
The few things that I was able to ascertain on those who had used it was breakdown of the natural components, the development of growth, because things would adhere to it and then things would grow on it, and the fact that it would move on the field with the water, the storm water,
Float.
it would reapply itself in various quantities across the field. And we really haven't had a lot of that issue with the crumb rubber. We go out maybe once a month and redress it with a brush to redistribute it, but very little of that.
How do you redistribute it if it's under the grass? Or do you
It's
lift-
actually a deep tine brush that that goes in any heavy area. It'll pick up larger quantities, put it in a bin, and then you reapply it as you go along the field. Yep.
So you're actually kind of pushing the crumb through the grass
Yes.
in a way.
Yep.
And that would also be the case with cork, and even more so because the cork would float every time there was a heavy rain.
Yeah, I think any infill product you would dress very similarly, including sand. Yep.
Is there anything you can do to keep it out of my cleats so they don't end up in piles in my bedroom?
And out of my shoes, so they're in the foyer when I
Every
go
time I
home.
fling my shin guards off, I got a pile of that stuff goes in my
I
bathroom.
know. Well, I appreciate your input and the depth at which you all have looked into it, and I think many of the studies that you have looked at, we have studied as well, and what's even of greater appreciation is the fact that we live and work in a community where I don't think we are going to stop looking at options as we move forward. I think both on the township side and the school district side, probably the two biggest players in this kind of development are going to continue to look for opportunities to use things that that are more natural and you know, provide the appropriate spaces for the kids. Right now, we found these to be the best available. So,
Right.
Well, thanks for the opportunity, and we'll have to keep it in mind to check once in a while to see
Yeah.
if there's any new studies out, and we'll try to keep
Absolutely.
Yeah.
you appraised.
yeah, keep me informed. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Leo.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Leo.
Okay, I would like to move on to the next object or subject on the agenda, which is the, well, I tell you, since I see that one of our agenda items is to talk to Chip Addis, the resident, about recycling performance here in Radnor.
Maybe we'll
So let's
postpone
postpone
that.
that to next month.
Yeah.
We'll move right along to you, Mark, if that's all right. We're going to.
You guys need to wrap up something with the field study.
No, I think I don't. There's no resolutions going to happen from us from the study of the field. This was just a discussion. So we would like to wrap up. Speaking of wrapping up, I'd like to wrap up the Pennsylvania Clean Power resolution subject. I certainly don't want that to drag on, and it's probably already dragged on maybe 1 month longer than it should have. In that, you know, it's a timely matter. So. The last time we talked about the subject was at the last meeting, and we said that we would, or Mark, and thanks for coming again. I appreciate you taking the time to come out here.
No problem.
Mark, you were here last month as well, and we said that, or you suggested that you would be okay bringing a resolution to the Board of Commissioners, but we said that we'd like to help you draft it in such a way that we, you know, it had our input and, you know, our blessing or whatever. So it probably didn't get done to the point it should have gotten done. Did it? Did it? Because I haven't seen it.
Yeah, I sent one to Sloan. I printed out.
You mind reading it?
Absolutely.
Oh, okay. I printed out 10, and I have 10 of the York. And then I just have like a little statement I can read if you guys want to hear it. Sure, yeah, they're all for you. My printer kind of ran out of ink at the end.
So did mine, so we're, oh, I just bought a new.
And this is my overall just statement to the Radnor Environmental Advisory Council regarding Radnor Township resolution requesting that the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection works with the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, the EPA, to develop a plan to reduce carbon pollution from Pennsylvania's power plants. In order to tackle the growing reality of climate change, the EPA announced the Clean Power Plan on June 2nd, 2014. It is the first major step that the United States has taken toward reducing carbon emissions, a primary driver of climate change. State-by-state emission limits were proposed with the overall goal of reducing nationwide carbon emissions by 30% from 2005 levels by 2030. Pennsylvania's emission reduction target rate is 32%. After receiving public comments, the EPA will issue its final rule in June of 2015. The states will then have 13 months to create their own carbon reduction plan before submitting them to the EPA by July 2016, with the possibility of 1 or 2 year extensions. The EPA will be in the position of issuing a federal plan for meeting Clean Power Plan goals for states that do not submit plans. Public comments in the form of resolutions from municipalities like Radnor Township emphasizing the importance of tackling climate change will go a long way in demonstrating public support for action on climate. This public support is critical in pushing forward these types of carbon pollution standards that we know we need to see in order to avert the worst impacts of climate change. Hope you guys got that.
That was very good. Can you repeat what the June 2015 deadline was? What did that date represent?
After the EPA will issue its final rule of the Clean Power Plan.
Okay, so that, I thought that was already done, but that's not.
Well, I mean, they announced the Clean Power Plan June 2nd, 2014. And
Okay, so then they accept comments and
so
then they
they're
issue a final rule.
accepting comments, and they're going to do their final ruling June of this year.
And I thought notable was the fact that there's a July 2016 deadline for states to submit their plans.
Right. Yeah.
That's going to show how
None
they're
of
going to meet
this-
their goals and what their goals are.
Right. And then if they don't, then the EPA will step in and do it. So we're pretty much saying we want the Pennsylvania Department to get on the stick and.
So I think this would be a good time to read this draft resolution. Can we hear, Sloan, you want to read it? Or Mark, or either one, doesn't matter.
Okay, I'll read it. And this is the resolution that a lot of municipalities throughout the state have proposed. Now this one basically it's a resolution for climate action, and it starts, whereas numerous authoritative scientific bodies, including the U.S. Global Change Research Program.
Is that climate change research program? Climate change? Or is that
U.S. Global Change, just Global Change Research
Global
Program.
change, okay.
And I looked into that, and that was initiated by the president and mandated by Congress to research global change. I think it says global change, but it is regarding climate change. And then the American Association for the Advancement of Science and the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change have recognized that carbon pollution created by the burning of fossil fuels is contributing to global warming. And whereas Pennsylvania's power plants are its largest source of carbon pollution, contributing to 47% of its total, and whereas the U.S. Supreme Court ruled in Massachusetts versus EPA 2007 that greenhouse gases are air pollutants as defined by the Clean Air Act, and the Environmental Protection Agency has the authority to regulate them, and whereas the Environmental Protection Agency's proposed Clean Power Plan sets a target of reducing the carbon emissions rate for Pennsylvania's power plants for the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania 32% by 2030. And whereas the Clean Power Plan gives Pennsylvania the opportunity to design its own plan to meet its carbon reduction targets by investing in renewable energy and energy efficiency, and whereas energy efficiency and renewable energy like wind and solar are proven cost-effective alternatives to burning fossil fuels, and whereas Radnor Township is committed to reducing greenhouse gas emissions, now therefore be it resolved by the Board of Commissioners of Radnor Township, Pennsylvania, that Pennsylvania Township respectfully requests that the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection work with U.S. Environmental Protection Agency officials to develop a plan to reduce carbon pollution for Pennsylvania's power plants to exceed its Clean Power Plan target, and that maximizes the potential for renewable energy and energy efficiency.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I thought that was pretty good. I liked it.
Yeah.
I do. I like that it's taken out the references that we, in the York
Right.
one, we had some issues when they attributed
Right.
like a certain,
Yeah,
meteorological
storms
event
and-
to
Yeah.
climate change or
Right.
disease outbreak
Yeah,
to
this is
climate
a little
change. So
cleaner.
I think it is, and it's sort of more it's sort of focused more on the regulatory side of things
Right.
than,
Yeah.
Do we want to have all those scientific organizations? I was wondering if maybe we focus on, the American Association for the Advancement of Science.
By the way, while you were talking, I did a quick look at the U.S. Global Change Research Program, and it is not global climate change, it's global change.
But
So
I haven't heard of that, so.
I haven't heard of it either. It was created in 1989 by presidential mandate, like Mark said, and its mission is to, but presidential initiative in '89 mandated by Congress in the Global Change Research Act of 1990 to assist the nation and the world to understand, assess, predict, and respond to human-induced and natural processes of global change. So it's a legitimate
Yeah.
United States government agency.
I hear you. I'm just wondering, the American Association for the Advancement of Science, I looked that up. That's the largest and oldest scientific organization in the country. So I personally felt we would be fine, with just that.
If it makes it read better, and just
Would
a little
you?
more simple.
What's your take?
It does say numerous scientific bodies, so we
But
just have
including,
one.
including.
I think it might be kind of, it sort of, I think it detracts from the
weight of it.
yeah, just say, do we cut out numerous and just have, based on one agency we're doing this? I think it has more sort of impact and power if it is numerous agencies.
I think it's fine the way it is personally, but
Okay.
it's just my opinion.
I tend to agree, yeah, I kind of like it.
I'd like to, just one question about the, in the resolution, the last, it's actually only one sentence, let's see. To work with the EPA to develop a plan to reduce carbon pollution from Pennsylvania's power plants to exceed its clean power plan target.
Right, I mean, the clean power plant target is 30%.
32% for Pennsylvania.
Yeah, but it's 32. I think we're sort of a bad state, so we have to increase. Ours has to be a little more.
We've been bad.
So
we-
the overall, so the overall is 30.
Yes, so, we've been, the EPA has set Pennsylvania's reduction goal, potential goal, at 32. That's what you said in the beginning, right?
Right, yeah. In order to
So-
get the overall 30% reduction across the board, Pennsylvania's rate, I think, has been
A little
set
higher.
at
Yeah, I get that.
little higher,
My
yeah.
question is, would it make sense to, I like things being direct and shooting high. I get that. Would it make sense to soften this a little bit and say, to meet or exceed its clean power plan target?
Well, and Mark, while you're thinking about that, let me give a little background. I did reach out to somebody at Penn Future that has studied this issue, Rob Altenberg, who has testified on this issue at the state level. And his view is that the EPA's Clean Power Plan for Pennsylvania, while a good plan, is not a stretch. And we could realistically exceed the suggested EPA targets. For example, Rob said there are 4 prongs for the Clean Power Plan for Pennsylvania, for other states as well. One of the prongs involves renewable energy, and now the standard for alternative energy for clean renewables for Pennsylvania at the state level for the power plants in Pennsylvania is 8.5% by the year 2020. That is quite low for the surrounding states of Maryland and New Jersey, which are already or are shooting for 20% by that year, by 2020. The EPA is calling for Pennsylvania to move to 16% from 8.5%, which is a big jump, but it's not as far as surrounding states. And Penn Future feels that it is very doable to go beyond 16%, maybe closer to the 20% of our neighbors. So, and there were other points on the other 3 prongs of the Clean Power Plan.
And I'm sure that the popularity of natural gas power plants as opposed to
That's right.
coal power plants is already probably
That's
set us
exactly
on
right.
the way to meeting this goal.
That's right.
But they're not in this resolution as a whereas. It doesn't say anywhere in here that whereas we've already achieved 10% of this 32% goal.
Should we insert?
I don't know if there's something, if you want to have something like that, like to say we should exceed this target, I think you really ought to back it up with some.
Okay.
I don't see how you can only tout renewables as a way to get to 32%.
Right. It's not
I mean,
the
our
only.
commissioner's about to talk about the status of nuclear power, and that's 0 emission,
Right.
and that's not even in here either.
Right. If it's helpful, I can go through some of the other prongs of the plan.
go
And
ahead.
Mark,
Go ahead.
please, join in. But so, there are 4 prongs of the Clean Power Plan. The first is at least 6% improvement in emission reduction for coal plants. Currently, the best plants, the best coal plants in the country are already 15% more efficient than the average plant. So by calling for a 6% improvement in efficiency, while that's a good number, it's not really even close to the 15% that is best practice currently. So again, 6% is what the EPA is calling for. 15% is most efficient. Something above 6% would not be an unreasonable stretch. A second prong is transferring from coal to gas, as you were natural gas, and using more and more gas over coal.
Well, that would come under energy efficiency, I would think.
They break it out as a separate prong, but it is definitely in terms of efficiency. But here's a statistic. As the gas, natural gas is powering our utilities about 50 to 60% of the time currently, according to Penn Future. EPA is suggesting that move from 50 to 60% currently to 70%. However, Penn Future feels that these plants are fully capable of running at much higher, about 90% capacity. So to move it from the EPA target of 70 to a number of closer to 90. Again, showing that there is something that is achievable and higher than the EPA goal for Pennsylvania. And then the third, or I guess it's the fourth prong, is with respect to energy efficiency overall, including things like efficiency of street lights and other things that utilities can encourage and subsidize and see payback through lower usage, energy usage. The EPA is calling for a 10% overall energy efficiency improvement. The Pennsylvania Public Utility Commission hired independent evaluators who examined 579 energy efficiency measures and found that Pennsylvania could more than double the Clean Power Plan suggested 10% efficiency increase and still save money, even using some conservative assumptions, meaning they didn't give any consideration in the savings to health benefits, lower diseases and costs and hospital stays and all that. So even taking all the health benefits out of the equation and just looking at hard dollars and cents, the independent evaluator found that there was considerably greater energy efficiency that could be achieved than what the EPA is calling for. So those were the four prongs. Again, they felt that this is not an overly ambitious, it's a good step. The EPA plan is a good step. But I came away from that discussion thinking this would be something it's reasonable to call for Pennsylvania to exceed the EPA power plant. So.
Okay, well, I was hoping you were going to have like this simple little key thing that we could just plop into a whereas that would make the call to exceed our target easy and by either of those four means, I'm fine with it. I was just hoping you could have said for instance, where are we right now compared to our 2005 emission levels? Are we at, below, or above that level right now?
I don't know.
I don't know either.
I would guess we're below, mainly because cars are more efficient, and that's why we had to raise the fuel tax. I would guess that the tendency to use natural gas because it's cheaper has reduced the percentage of power generated by coal. And I know it has nationally, but probably somewhat in Pennsylvania.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and lighting's more efficient,
LEDs.
HVAC systems are more efficient, but there's also probably more people and all that other stuff. So I was just hoping we had something real concise that we could put in here saying, well, here's a good whereas to say, this is why we think you should exceed that 32% goal rather than just meet that 32 goal. But, if you think we're just making this too complicated, then you can leave it as is. I was just suggesting something to maybe knock it home. But
I think the 4-point thing is really what it's going to be based on, and maybe it should be incorporated as you're starting to suggest.
Maybe that makes sense. What's your feeling, Mark? in
I would
terms-
say
Well, I
each of those
also
four.
don't want to complicate it. It's more public. They're just looking for public comments, and I don't think they're going to look this over too carefully. I guess it's more for how I want Radnor to be comfortable with whatever this is.
He's got a point.
So whatever you guys are comfortable with.
Right.
I think you'll never get there.
So Skip, what's your recommendation? Do you think we need to put all?
Well, I'm only a liaison, but
No, but you're a
No, but I-
valued liaison.
I think
all
as
are.
valuable as renewable can be as one of the 4 components, I think this resolution
But
seems to suggest.
this doesn't mention the 4 components.
I know, that's what I'm saying.
Oh.
So
I'm
you
saying,
would-
I'm saying it's got one of the 4 in here, it should have all 4. It's a simple,
Where's the one?
the renewable. Isn't that what you started to say, your first prong discussion, wasn't that about renewables?
Well, let me clarify.
That it was
We
going to
didn't
go
put-
to
we didn't put-
20%, you were saying going from 8.5 to 16. Wasn't
Right.
that a discussion about
That is,
wind and solar?
yes.
But it's not
Okay.
But it's not in
It's
here.
not in the
But
It's not in the
it's not in
current
here
draft.
in that sense, but in other words, the only one of the 4 prongs in here is renewable. And then you gave us the meat and potatoes part of what the EPA was saying, which was go from 8.5 to 16.
Yeah, and even further, we didn't even put the renewable point in.
Well, he's saying
no,
that the second to last whereas, I think,
Yes, I'm
mentions,
saying that.
mentions that
That's the one
renewables.
prong without the meat and potatoes.
But
and
it
I
also
think-
says energy efficiency too, which is a second.
Yeah, that's true, that's true. Okay, it's 2 prongs of the 4.
But it's not giving any specifics.
I mean, in a weird way, we talk about buying green power. I wonder if there's any way to buy natural gas power instead of coal power, for example. That would be the fastest single thing, probably, if within reason, that to
Well,
drop
certainly,
carbon.
these statistics look like we could be using the natural gas power at a greater rate and using that for a greater share of the total power produced. So,
Listen, if this thing does stay the same as it is right now, I would be willing to get behind it as is. And I want to tell you just something briefly about my conversation with Commissioner Higgins about this. He would like to hear a draft. So whatever we decide tonight, I'd like to send that to him. I'll copy us and Mark and see what he thinks. But this looks like something that they would get behind, frankly, to me.
Yeah, I like it. Just sort of getting back to Skip's point, I kind of agree. I guess it's the third to last whereas. Maybe that's changed to just say, Clean Power Plan gives Pennsylvania the opportunity to design its own plan to meet its carbon reduction targets by utilizing, it's sort of like looking for the best technology, right? Best technology, which can include renewable energy and energy efficiency. But sort of make it focus on, you're really looking for the technology advance. Let's try and get away from the 200-year-old coal plants, That might be a way to sort of get the 4 prongs in there without sort of belaboring each one. So, yeah.
I don't mean to belabor them.
No, I just mean
meant-
so we don't add like 4
I like
more whereas.
I like Sloan's synopsis of the 4. I mean, one of the points is more natural gas use in power plants. I mean, I would like to almost see that in there. If we're going to endorse planning and you want to mention renewable and energy efficiency is also probably one of the top 2 of the 4 prongs for reducing carbon as well. But, I don't know. I like the
I-
four-prong approach.
yeah.
I think maybe, and I stand corrected, there are not just one, there are two here, but can we put the other two in, that's all?
I also think it may make sense to put those prongs in, because it does, as drafted, it does beg the question a little bit, why are we calling for Pennsylvania to exceed the plan? Most of the resolution as drafted now looks like it's supporting the plan. And then we get to the last part, why do we need to exceed it? These
Well, I mean,
prongs-
again, it's the 30-32. I mean, I guess that's what, the overall EPA plan is for a 30% reduction. The EPA has specified they want Pennsylvania to be 32%.
But we're calling for Pennsylvania to exceed its clean power plan target,
Which is
I
30,
would say
which is 32.
Oh, I see.
See what I
Yes.
mean? So,
Mhm.
so I think what we're calling
Well, we
for-
could just, yeah, I think then what Josh was said, we could just do meet or
exceed?
Meet or exceed. I'm fine with that.
That's one way. Another thing, like what Sloan, or what Skip said, is we could just add another whereas to put the other two bullet points of this
Right.
Penn Futures suggestions in there, which would be encouraging a switch from coal to gas, and those coal plants that are remaining need to improve their efficiency. If you wanted to add all 4 points into there, or just leave them out and,
Yeah, well,
and
I-
go as is.
But again, I mean, that's not really, I mean, burning gas isn't reducing greenhouse gas
It is when
emissions.
you switch from coal to gas.
But it's still you're still burning a fossil fuel, but,
You are, yeah, but you're burning less carbon
yeah.
to provide the
Right.
same electricity.
So it's in line with a reduction in carbon emissions.
True.
It'd be hard to go to a totally renewable energy generating system in the next 30 years. I mean, it's too
Well, I
hard.
agree.
Right. I mean, I like the stronger language of exceeds, and I do think there is grounds to think that that is realistic. It's not too pie in the sky. I'm happy if you'd like to put some of these or all of these points into maybe a couple of additional whereas clauses, and
circulate that?
and circulate that.
Okay.
Yeah, let's do that.
I got just a couple things. I like the idea of meet or exceed. I think if you just say exceed, the next question is like, well, by how much? And we're not really saying that. The other thing, maybe in this in the resolved piece, meet or exceed its clean power plant target by 2030, just so we kind of reiterate. That really, all we're asking is that we get on the plan, right? That we meet the plan. And I think by putting that time factor in there, I know it's up top, but I think just to kind of reiterate it down below might be.
By 2030. So it would read, meet or exceed its clean power plan target by 2030 in
Yeah.
the last line. Okay.
That's-
Well, I think what we should do is, how about if we have, it seems like there's some legitimate differences of opinion. Why don't we put it to a vote in terms of who thinks the resolution should read, that we would meet or exceed, and how many people think it should read exceeds?
Yeah, so one school of thought is leave it as a procedural kind of resolution where we say, hey, Pennsylvania, you need to get on board and go through the motions like you're being told to do by the EPA. And the other school of thought is, hey, we have this advice from somebody like Penn Futures who says, yeah, you have to do that, plus you need to exceed it because your
Right.
goal is actually too low.
Too low. It's not enough of a stretch.
Okay, well,
So,
informal vote.
informal vote. Who supports meets or exceeds?
Or just meet, meet the target.
Just meet?
Well, yeah, that'd be the one.
Which
Meet-
one are we doing?
Meet the
Okay.
target.
Who's in favor of meets the target? All in favor of meets the target, please say aye.
Me.
One. Okay, so the next option is
Exceed.
meet or exceed. So who's in favor of meet or exceed the target?
I am.
Okay.
So
And
that, I
who-
think that, I think what we should
who's-
do is,
Who's in favor of exceeds? 1.
oh, exceed only, oh, I didn't know if there's anything left.
There's exceeds.
So, okay, so why don't we just get another couple whereases in here?
Yep,
that
and we'll do
that
meets or
supports-
exceeds.
That supports the fact that it's feasible to exceed, okay?
Okay.
And
Okay, that's a good point.
That's all we're-
Right, so
that's-
it shows that it's feasible.
it's feasible to exceed that
Right.
target. That's all all we need to get in here.
Skip, your vote was
Well, I was meet or exceed.
meet or exceed. Okay, well, you're in the
The only
winning coalition.
the only reason I said to meet is because I wanted to keep it simple and get it passed by the BOC ASAP.
Right.
I didn't want to, have to see it fail for any reason, so.
It is aspirational.
It is
That's true.
aspirational.
All right, so
agree.
I will put in, do you want all the points in here?
It's up to you.
Okay.
I voted meet.
Okay. Setting the bar low. Okay. All 4 prongs. I'll put that in.
Let's-
We'll
let's-
do meet or exceed.
Let's
And should we-
let's circulate it
Should we vote on it?
before the next meeting.
Is it okay if we did this again next meeting, or should we
No,
do
no,
it
no, no,
tonight?
can we just get it done over, by email? I guess we have to vote on it
We
in
have to
person.
vote
huh?
on
You want
it.
to have a vote on the 4 prongs versus 2? Or status quo or 4 prongs?
Sure.
I move that we vote to have 4 prongs. All those in favor?
Aye.
Yeah, I agree. All right.
Okay.
Okay.
Done.
So that's nice, because now we've approved the substance of the resolution. We can tailor it or tweak it
Finalize the text.
over email.
By
Does that-
email.
Does that sound good? Okay.
Yeah. And we
And
can,
then send me the final
We'll send you the
draft.
final.
Okay.
but we're going to keep you in,
Yeah, we'll
involved in
definitely
the-
keep you in the loop on that.
because this
Okay.
is your baby.
That sounds good. And then once that's completed, you'll
Well,
let Jim Higgins
know.
take a look at it to
Right.
see if it'll run by the board. He'll
Yeah, he'll
Right.
give us a
see
heads
what
up
the
on
board will
Right.
think.
how it's
Okay.
unfair, I think, yeah.
That sounds good.
All right,
Well,
Great.
thank you, Mark.
great.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate
Thank
your
you.
time.
Definitely good to work with you.
Thank you. All righty. I've lost my agenda. Here it is. I wanted to let you guys, moving into the work group reports, there should be a Radnor Green Team coming up. I don't have the date yet. I did request it from Melissa just recently. But we are hoping to get maybe the Shade Tree group to join us at the Green Team, the next Green Team.
Yeah, that would be great.
One of our constituents pointed out to us that there are grants available for purchasing trees, getting trees planted, from various organizations, including like the Pennsylvania Horticultural Society and various other groups. And we don't know what the plan is for 2015 in terms of planting trees. They've done it in the past couple of years, but we don't know what's going forward. So thought maybe you could bring them in. It's one of our greenhouse gas action plan items, so bring them in, see what they're planning on doing, and maybe come up with a plan. And then we could help with grants and that kind
Right.
of stuff.
Right.
Tiny aside on trees, well, this is like jumping into liaison. The Villanova early stage plan for building in the CICD, I think they're going to plant 3 times or 4 times as many trees as they're removing.
Great.
Are there many trees in the parking lot?
No,
Okay.
but there are other, nearby, some trees are going away.
Okay.
So, well, actually, I guess they're planting so many trees because they are taking away the parking lot. And the landscaping will have a lot of trees.
Also involved with the green team is the electric purchase, or the green electric purchasing RFP. It went to the Board of Commissioners at the last meeting. They did not approve the purchase. We had a quote that, I think it's only a 24-hour quote, so it has expired. But they did ask that Ben Cooper, who's in purchasing, check out the cost of dirty electricity, so that when they make their decision, I'm reading their mind now, so that when they make their decision, they can see, okay, well, here's what Pico costs, here's how much we save with this 100% wind power quote, and here's how much we save with a dirty electricity quote from somewhere else.
Right.
So
And our understanding from discussions with Constellation is that it's only a few $1,000s additional cost to do the clean power purchase. And I would say that we, strongly support
Yes.
the purchase of the wind power.
Contact your commissioner.
And contact your commissioners. It's in the greenhouse gas action plan, which was passed by the
Commissioners.
by the commissioners. So we're supportive of it. Although we also believe that it would not be the final stop on the path toward clean power, and we would like to continue to work on perhaps solar panels. So.
Mhm. On the REN grant, Dan, do you know what the latest is on that? I know there was an update that was circulated by Ann recently on that. Was it an announcement of the of a workshop?
Right, so this past Monday, I gave a brief presentation to the Board of Commissioners just about where this was planned and gave the dates of March 14th at Radnor Library is the workshop. We've got two experts, John Rogers, speaking about rain gardens and their construction, and then I believe it's Sarah Curry, I want to say, so a woman that's going to talk about native plants. And then April 25th is the planned date for the planting here. Now, what has to happen first is the parking spaces, those parallel parking spaces along the driveway have to get built, and Public Works has to come in and actually build the berm and install the soil for the rain garden. They were supposed to start that whole parking project. I talked to Steve Norsini Monday. They were supposed to start that 2 weeks ago, and just the weather's killed it. So I'm just going to keep pushing. I think we have to spend all the money by June 15th. So we kind of have a couple months there to catch up. I mean, we would love to do it April 25th because it's 3 days after Earth Day, and I think we're having that tree giveaway the same day. So it would be a great tie-in, but we're just going to have to wait and see how the construction pans out.
Okay, thank you.
Could I ask a couple clarifying questions, if you don't mind? Just to reiterate some of the things you talked about in your presentation, was the site chosen on the basis of known water runoff patterns?
It was really chosen because there was nowhere else to go.
Got it, okay.
Yeah, we had originally thought it was going to be down more where this parking project is going, and that just got too big and took over too much ground.
Gotcha.
So it's going to capture, hopefully, all of these new parking spaces, the new parallel parking spaces up there, which otherwise would have had no control. There are some other rain gardens planned for the bigger parking area. They're not going to catch everything, but they'll catch something.
Okay.
But these 4 spaces would have just gone straight to the stream
Right.
unless we put in this rain garden. So
That
in
makes
that
sense.
respect, I think it's a good thing.
And it sounds like there's some opportunities to do future gardens around the area as well, if there's, money for it in the future, if there are folks that want to get involved with that.
Yeah, I got a little bit on my stormwater soapbox at the end of my presentation that, I know we have this stormwater fee now. I think that's great. I know there are infrastructure problems that have to be fixed. But, if the solution is to put bigger pipes in to get it away from us, we're just blowing out the people downstream. And, I really think these sort of small green interventions on a massive scale, I mean, that's the answer. Because, we're mostly residential here. Our houses and our driveways drain to the streets. And once it's in the street, it's in the inlet, it's in the pipe, it's in the stream, and you can't do anything. So the answer is to manage it on your property. And, I would hope that maybe we, out of this fund, maybe there's a way to start creating an incentive for homeowners to start doing on their lots. And it doesn't have to be, you don't need a backhoe to do these things, It can be really small scale, just a sort of a depression at a downspout in the right place. You do that times that, how many thousands of houses in this township. I mean, you'll start to make a difference, so.
I thought that was a really nice point in your presentation. I like the emphasis on native plants and the emphasis on, kind of keeping it small and replicable.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dan. And I will defer the Greenways and Open Space report from Ann until next month when she's here, unless anybody else has anything to add to that. I don't have anything to report on community environmental education and awareness, unless anybody else does. Liaison reports. Luke, you've been sitting so quietly and so patiently.
Quietly and patiently.
Tell us what's going on. Parks and Rec.
Well, a little bit, well, no, not much to build upon from Mr. Campbell. Last month, as you know, we passed on a recommendation to the Board of Commissioners that they put up to 3 cell towers in 3 parks. We'll see what they do with it. So at this point, it's in their hands. They're going to negotiate the leases and all that good stuff, and we'll see where it goes. Clem McCrone is the big improvement project that we're working on that needs to get started. And then in terms of greenways and open space, as Chris Campbell reported, there are trail plans that are out for Ardrossan. They're going to put in about 6 new trails. And I can tell you where, well, there's a map that I'll forward to everybody.
What are they made out of? What was the surface?
There's all different types. There's
okay.
there's 6 different types, different lengths, different widths, different surfaces, things like that. What I was looking at was we got an email from the designer. It's got a proposed network, and it has an update on each individual one, and he goes into serious detail. So I'll forward it on to everybody. It's something everybody should look at.
How many miles?
Total mileage, I'm not sure. I mean, for instance, where is it? I don't know off the top of my head in terms of total miles. But for instance, the Darby Paoli Road Trail is going to be 1.1 miles in and of itself. And then, where's the other one I was interested in? In terms of,
That's a big email.
Well,
yeah,
well-
and then you have they're going to put a loop in the Rye Field that's about a mile long in and of itself. That's going to be mostly grass, but 4 to 6 inches, 4 to 6 feet wide, things like that. So it's going to be they're varying. They're not going with one set width, one type of surface. It depends on where it is exactly in Ardrossan. and
Excellent.
everything. So it's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting.
What's the process on before that plan gets approved? Is it being circulated for comment and?
Yeah, circulated for comment in the green, and the trail group that we have with John Fisher, Commissioner Nagel's involved, Commissioner Schaefer's involved. I'm on there, Pat Gillen's involved from Parks and Rec.
So it doesn't go to public
2 others.
comment, just stays in that group, right?
In that group right now.
Okay.
Yeah, and then it'll make its way to the Board of Commissioners.
Okay.
So that's where that is. That's really about it for now. And there's no set timetable on that. The gentleman who drafted it for us, whose name is Rick Trails, he's having his second daughter shortly, so we'll be moving on that. Hopefully by the summer, I'd like to see something come from that. So hopefully at the latest.
So we have a Dr. Firestone studying tires.
And Rick Trails.
And Rick Trails studying
Rick Trails.
trails.
Rick Trails.
Interesting.
Yeah, he's doing a great job, and again, that went out to everybody to look at. He wants comments back, I think, next week, early March. He wants comments back by, and then we're going to go from there. So
Thanks,
I'll forward that on to everybody to look at, and it's interesting stuff, so.
Thanks.
Yeah.
How about a planning commission update from Skip Planning?
For a change, I do have a few things to say. We actually had our first meeting of the year yesterday. The January meeting was canceled because the agenda was empty, and the February meeting was canceled because of weather issues. Yesterday, we had a small development between Willow and Plant Avenue that was at the sketch plan level, so we just gave some input as to the design. It's 4 units. It's small, but better than what's there. And the big discussion was the first 4 phases of the Villanova construction of the new dormitories and parking facilities. In summary, Villanova has improved the plan noticeably in a variety of areas from the conditional use plan that they submitted. One of the things I mentioned was more trees. Some of the berms and landscaping barriers are a little larger or better designed. Traffic flow for the new Pike garage is better than the original plan. So there is so much material that we talked about it for about 2 hours and we tabled it because the public had said what they had to say. And there's a lot of loose ends that are being constructively worked on right now. It's going to be addressed again on Monday, the next planning meeting. Just before it is the latest iteration of a biomed plan, however. And when I looked at it briefly, because I was focused on yesterday's materials first, it looks like another office plan. So far, that mixed-use approach seems dead in the water because it didn't make any headway in the form of the new ordinance. So they are entitled to do some kind of development, but it's going to be more within the existing zoning. And stay tuned, it'll be on Monday. There's also a separate special meeting only on Villanova, which may bring more of the public out on March 10th. That's my report.
So the biomed, it's in a sort of, what's the stage it's being?
There's I believe at least a substantially modified or new plan. They had sort of a concept plan they kind of floated out about 4 or 5 months ago.
Was that the mixed use?
No.
No.
The mixed use effort had bonus density aspects, and I don't think the commissioners liked it as it was set up. I do think that the township has to have some mixed use sooner or later. I think it makes sense. I think it actually does have some traffic mitigation aspects, and it also modifies traffic patterns and flows because people that are in apartments don't necessarily leave at the same time that people arrive at offices and things like that.
Was there, and forgive me if you've explained this, but was there a clear statement of what the as of right building density is? Is that clear or not? Is that still being?
My personal approach to planning is that I focus on today's agenda. And we got the material, the biomed material, the day before yesterday's meeting. So all I did before I came tonight was take a quick look to see that it was still office, et cetera.
Okay.
And it is still office. I don't know if it's the 5-building plan that was out there or a new plan. I will know before Monday, and you'll have to wait till Monday on that. Sorry.
Okay.
The one quirky issue that came up in their first conceptual float is that Sue Stern pointed out that in our code, when you do a parking garage, you're supposed to start with the premise that if there were no parking structure or garage, that you could have X parking spaces to service Y building square footage, and that you are allowed to take that surface parking and condense it into a structure. But it's not that it gave you the right to build a structure that was greater than what you could have had as surface parking so that you can have even more buildings. That's her point. And that was being researched, and that came up in some commissioner discussion, but I don't know what the resolution of that is. I'm hoping that we have some clarity on that on Monday.
Okay, so that seems to connect.
That's a big issue.
Yeah, that's a big issue, and so it seems like we're still working through what the as of right permissible amount would be.
Right.
Once that's settled, then the question of, well, would we give them a little more if they do maybe a mixed use?
No,
or-
it's not. There's no giving right now because there's no new ordinance right now. There's no, the mixed use ordinance was an attempt to justify greater density because the type of use was
Less
going to be
traffic.
less.
Right,
Less impact.
right.
In other words, an apartment is typically bigger than an office cubicle, or a office between common and individual use. So if you build 300 apartments, you use up a lot more square footage than 300 quote offices.
Right. But the traffic impact.
Well, the other charm of a mixed use is you live in the apartment and you walk to work about 100 yards,
Nice, nice.
that kind of thing.
So there could be a role maybe down the road to look at,
Or you have a big office complex and somebody comes in from out of town and they stay in the hotel, that's also part of the mixed use
right,
plan, instead of commuting from another hotel to the office, or
Right.
vice versa.
but it does make sense to first figure out what the as of right baseline is.
Right. Well, and there are some of that came up in the early biomed things. Another issue that's been kicked around a lot is it really 26 acres or is it 19 acres or 18 and a half acres because of the right-of-way in the Blue Route.
Right.
And I'm not 100% sure that issue is completely put to bed. They did have a plan that was approved in 2006 or 7 for like 450 or 475,000 square feet, and knowing that right now it's like 370 and underutilized, so that the traffic is incrementally and materially going to be much greater under a by right anyway. And we have that problem too. But so we'll see. But it's within the existing ordinance as opposed to a mixed use is what's coming up on Monday, as I understand it.
Thanks, Skip. Moving on to old business, I wanted to mention that the recycling list that we thought was such a great idea, it's what township residents, they always have questions about, what do I do with my old blank, right? And we thought it would be a great idea to have a web page on Radnor that answered those questions to the best of our knowledge, even if it meant referring them to a private entity, like, okay, take your recycle or your old compact fluorescent bulbs to IKEA, because they have a facility there. So I started a list on Excel, and then Sloan forwarded me this list that was on the Delaware County website, and it seems to be just that. Right, I mean, it seemed to have everything that I haven't gone over it in detail, but it looks like it's everything that we were. Very comprehensive. And if we ever find that it's missing something, I'm sure we could probably find somebody there that could add a section. But they had watch batteries, light bulbs, wood waste, confidential document, how to get those recycled, shredded and recycled. So what I'm now thinking is maybe we need to somehow just either provide a link on the website to that document, which appears to be comprehensive, or rebroadcast that web page on our site. One of those, something like that.
Did you check whether there were any things that you'd found that were not on the?
I got about halfway through my list and stopped before this
Because
meeting.
everything was
checking out.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
But I haven't done it completely.
Okay. Because I thought there were some things that you had that weren't on the county, but if it's completely comprehensive, then I think it makes sense just to link to that.
Yeah.
Make it very accessible.
Yeah, and that way, by having a link, if Delaware County updates it, then we don't have to worry about updating ours.
With the update from our list.
Yeah. So I'll take another look at that list and see if it is comprehensive, and if it's not, I'll contact Delco to see if they wouldn't mind adding, something to it. Okay? And then I'll talk to Melissa or somebody here at the township about getting that link put on. Any other old business? Any new business? All right. We had public. And the kids cut out early. I'm going to make sure their professor knows they didn't stay to the end.
You scared them off, Josh. You scared them off.
All right, meeting adjourned. Thanks.